The enforcer grabbed her arm, then remembered what had been walking beside her. Part 1. The first mistake enforcer Verk saw made was grabbing the human woman. The second was looking down. Because by the time he remembered what had been walking beside her, the thing was no longer beside her. It was behind him. And everyone in Platform 9 knew it. Nobody screamed. That was the strange part. There were nearly 400 people packed beneath the rain shields of the Kestrel Exchange that afternoon. Merchants, dock crews, pilgrims, freight inspectors, families waiting for the westbound Skytrams. Not one of them screamed. They simply moved away. Quietly, like water separating around a stone. Verk still had his hand clamped around the woman's upper arm when he noticed the empty space widening around them. His thumb was pressed into the sleeve of her old gray field jacket. Her shopping bag had fallen against her boot. 3 small blue fruits rolled across the wet platform. The human woman looked at his hand. Then at him. She wasn't frightened. That should have bothered him first. Instead, what bothered him was the sound. A low, wet click. Directly behind his left shoulder. Verk stopped breathing. Somewhere near the tram rails, a maintenance drone continued welding a cracked guide plate. Sparks hissed into the rain. The station announcements continued in their soft, synthetic voice. Westbound service delayed 14 standard minutes. Click. Verk's fingers opened. Slowly, the human pulled her arm back. She rubbed the place where he'd grabbed her. "You really shouldn't do that," she said. Her voice was tired. Not threatening. Not angry. Just tired. Verk swallowed. He was almost 2.5 meters tall, armored from throat to ankle in black civic authority plates. His species, the Dravak, had heavy facial bone ridges and dense muscle designed for the gravity wells of their homeworld. People usually stepped aside when he walked through a crowd. People definitely stepped aside when he wore the silver jaw insignia of an exchange enforcer. But right then, none of that meant anything. Because a shadow rose behind him. It rose so slowly that the glossy station floor caught the reflection first. Long forelimbs. A narrow rib cage. A head shaped like a predatory wedge. 4 pale eyes. Verk saw it in the puddle beneath his boots. His blood went cold. The creature standing behind him was called a Mureth. At least, that was the trade language name for it. The correct word came from an extinct frontier dialect nobody spoke anymore. The closest translation was, "The thing that waits until you stop watching." Verk had seen one before. Only once. 15 years earlier. On Darren's moon. He had watched 6 armored bounty hunters try to trap one inside a cargo corridor. The Mureth had killed 5. The 6th survived because he crawled beneath a leaking coolant pipe and stayed there until rescue arrived. He never walked again. Verk remembered the report. Mureths did not roar. They did not charge. They did not posture like territorial predators. They watched. They calculated. Then they moved so quickly most security cameras recorded only a blur. And the one behind him was enormous. Its shoulder stood nearly level with the human woman's head. Its dark hide looked black at first glance, but under the overhead lights, Verk could see deep blue lines running beneath it like buried veins. Its jaws were closed. That was somehow worse. A narrow metal collar sat around its neck. Not a restraint collar. A simple woven band with a brass identification tag. Verk read the engraving. Tallow. The human bent down and picked up one of the blue fruits. Tallow. The Mureth's head turned. The entire platform froze. The woman pointed to the ground beside her. Here, for several seconds, nothing happened. Then the most feared land predator in 3 sectors calmly walked around Verk and sat beside her. Its tail curled around its paws. Verk stared. The human picked up the remaining fruit. One had been crushed beneath someone's boot. She sighed. That one was expensive. Verk finally found his voice. You brought a Murath into a civilian transport exchange. The woman looked at him. No. Verk blinked. No. He followed me. Several people nearby made small sounds of disbelief. The woman glanced around at them. Not today, in general. She reached into the dropped bag, checking what remained. Bread packs. Dried meat. A small coil of electrical wire. 2 nutrient bricks. A bottle of cheap mineral tonic. Completely ordinary purchases. The kind of things dock workers bought after a long shift. Verk's training finally returned. He straightened. Citizen, dangerous fauna are prohibited beyond the freight boundary without containment authorization. The woman looked at Tallow. Then back at him. He's not fauna. Verk almost laughed. He didn't. The Murath was watching him. What is he then? The woman considered that. Complicated. Someone in the crowd snorted. Verk turned. Nobody admitted to it. Rain rattled against the transparent roof above them. Beyond the station walls, the city of Orison dropped away in layers of steel towers, suspended bridges, and copper-lit habitation rings built into the cliffs. Far below, the storms of Kepri rolled through the valley. Lightning flashed between floating refinery platforms. The human stood in the middle of it, all as if she had no idea how absurd the situation looked. She was maybe 35. Maybe 40. Humans were difficult to judge. Dark hair tied loosely at the back. Pale scar beside her mouth. Heavy work boots. Oil under one fingernail. No visible weapon. She had the posture of someone who spent more time fixing machines than fighting people. Verk activated the wrist plate on his armor. Name: Mara Vin. Occupation: Pressure Systems Mechanic. Employer: Independent. His wrist display searched the exchange registry. A profile appeared. Mara Vin. Human. Temporary Residency Authorization. Sector 12. Licensed Atmospheric Systems Technician. No criminal record. No active contracts. No known military service. Verk looked from the display to the predator. The computer had no entry for Tallow. Where did you get the animal? Mara's expression changed. Only slightly. But Verk noticed it. I didn't get him. Then explain. I found him. There was a pause. Where? Out past the ash flats. The crowd shifted. Even Verk felt his stomach tighten. The ash flats weren't technically forbidden. Nobody needed to forbid them. They stretched west of Orison for nearly 1,000 kilometers. Black volcanic glass. Sulfur storms. Broken mining rigs left behind after the Helix Consortium collapse. There were old tunnels out there. Abandoned research stations. And things that survived because nobody had bothered killing them. You found a Murath in the ash flats, Verk said. Yes. And brought it back. No. Again. That irritatingly calm no. Mara adjusted the bag on her shoulder. I found him trapped under a collapsed extractor tower, cut him loose, patched his leg, left. And he showed up outside my workshop 4 days later. Verk stared. Then I fed him. A merchant nearby muttered something. Mara looked over. What, he was hungry? The merchant immediately looked away. Verk almost pinched the bridge of his nose. Citizen Ven, regardless of how this situation began, the animal cannot remain inside the exchange. Fine. Mara turned toward the exit. Verk raised a hand. Wait. Tallow rose. Verk lowered the hand. He was beginning to understand the social geometry of the situation. Mara waited. Verk chose his next words carefully. The creature will need to be inspected. No. It is required. No. Citizen. He's been inspected. By whom? A veterinarian. Verk actually stared at her. For livestock. Dr. Issel on Forage Street. Verk's wrist plate searched. There was, unbelievably, an exotic animal clinician named Issel registered on Forage Street. Specialty classifications included off-world megafauna, industrial organisms, and xenobiological rehabilitation. Mara tilted her head. You want his medical record. Verk did. Mostly because he wanted proof that reality had not completely abandoned him. She tapped her wrist terminal and transferred a file. The record opened. Species Murath. Approximate age unknown. Mass 312 kilograms. Sex male. Condition at first presentation. Severe hind limb crush injury, dehydration, parasitic infection, embedded industrial shrapnel. Temperament notes. Patient remains calm when human handler is present. Do not separate from handler without sedation plan. Under behavior, one line had been bolded 3 times. Do not interpret stillness as compliance. Verk read that line twice. Then he looked at Tallow. Tallow stared back. See, Mara said. That does not help your case. It helps mine. How? It proves he's had his vaccinations. Somebody laughed. A real laugh this time. A young dockhand leaning against a pillar. Verk pointed at him. Move along. The dockhand moved. Still smiling. Verk looked back at Mara. I will escort you outside. Great. And this incident will be reported. Also great. You may receive a summons. Put it under the door. I need your registered address. It's in your screen. Verk checked. It was. He hated humans. Not personally. Professionally. They treated authority as a conversation. Most species did not. The Dravak obeyed rank. The Solani negotiated. The Reth simply paid fines before committing violations. Humans wanted to discuss why the rule existed in the first place. Mara started walking. Tallow followed. The crowd parted. Verk walked 3 meters behind them. Not because he was afraid. At least that's what he told himself. They passed through the southern access corridor and reached the open transit terrace. The rain was colder there. Wind curled between the towers. Mara stopped beneath a flickering sign. Can I go now? Verk looked at Tallow. The animal stood in the rain, eyes half closed. Where are you headed? Home. Sector 12. Eventually. Eventually. I need to pick up a regulator manifold in the machine quarter. You are not bringing that creature through the machine quarter. Mara's jaw tightened. Then how am I supposed to get home? Call transport. They won't take him. Precisely. Mara stared at him. There was a whole argument behind her eyes. Verk could see it forming. Then she seemed to decide she didn't have the energy. Fine. She walked toward the edge barrier. Tallow followed. Verk frowned. The transit lane is the other direction. I know. Then where are you going? Mara stopped. She pointed across the city. Verk followed her finger. Sector 12 sat on the far ridge, nearly 8 kilometers away. You are walking. Looks that way. In this storm. I'm waterproof. Tallow sneezed. Mara looked at him. Mostly. Something about the ridiculousness of that answer briefly disarmed Verk. He almost smiled. Almost. Then a sharp pulse came through his armor. Priority signal. All exchange authority units. His wrist display flashed red. Security lockdown. Verk stiffened. Mara noticed. Problem. Stay here. That's never a good sign. Verk turned toward the exchange entrance. Every outer door slammed shut. Heavy blast shutters dropped over the transparent walls. Inside, station lights switched from white to red. People started shouting. Then came the alarm. Not fire. Not evacuation. A low 3-tone pulse. Hostile presence. Verk's training took over. He pulled the compact arc pistol from his thigh holster. Mara watched him. What happened? I said stay here. What happened? Verk touched 2 fingers to his helmet receiver. Control Unit 9, status. Static. Then a voice. Multiple shooters, North Concourse, unknown armor, possible contract assault. Gunfire cracked faintly through the station walls. Verk's expression hardened. Mara looked toward the doors. There are civilians in there. There are 23 authority personnel inside. That's not what I said. Verk glanced at her. Something had changed. The tired mechanic was gone. Not completely. But her shoulders had lowered. Her breathing had slowed. Her eyes moved across the architecture. Doors. Cameras. Roofline. Service vents. She wasn't looking at the chaos like a frightened civilian. She was measuring it. Verk noticed. Have you been in combat? Mara's eyes flicked toward him. No. It came too quickly. Verk almost questioned her. Then the southern blast shutter exploded outward. Metal fragments spun across the terrace. Verk shoved Mara down behind a support column. A bolt of blue plasma struck the wall where her head had been. Tallow vanished. Verk did not see him move. 1 second, the Mureth stood beside Mara. The next, there was only rain. 3 figures emerged through the smoke. Tall. Narrow. Wearing matte red armor. Kesh mercenaries. Verk recognized the segmented helmets immediately. One fired. Verk returned 2 shots. The mercenary ducked. A second ran for cover. The third reached the terrace. Then Tallow hit him. There was no roar. No warning. The Mureth came out of the rain like part of the weather. Its shoulder slammed into the Kesh mercenary's chest. The impact lifted the armored soldier off his feet. He flew 6 meters and struck the glass railing. The railing cracked. His rifle skidded away. Tallow planted 1 paw on his chest. The mercenary froze. Tallow lowered his head. 4 pale eyes. Closed jaws. Stillness. The soldier stopped moving. Mara stood. Tallow. The creature looked toward her. Leave him. Tallow stepped off. The mercenary didn't move for several seconds. Then he crawled away. Verk stared. You trained him. No. That was a command. He knows a few words. You trained a Mureth. I taught him what leave him means. That is training. Fine. More gunfire sounded inside the station. Mara crouched beside the dropped Kesh rifle. Verk raised his pistol. "Don't touch that." She already had it. Her hands moved over the weapon. "Check charge. Magazine. Safety. Emitter aperture. Too fast. Far too fast." Verk's suspicion returned. "You said you've never been in combat." "I haven't. You just cleared a Kesh pulse carbine in 3 seconds." Mara looked at the weapon. "I fix pressure systems." "That is not a pressure system. It's a gas-assisted magnetic accelerator." Verk blinked. She pointed at the rear housing. "Compressed helium pulse pushes the carrier before the field kicks in. Pressure system." There was no time to argue. A body stumbled through the blown doorway. Authority uniform. Junior officer. Blood on his neck. Verk caught him. "What happened?" "Freight level," the officer gasped. "They came through maintenance. They're looking for someone." "Who?" The officer swallowed. "Human." Verk slowly looked at Mara. Mara's face went still. "Name?" Verk asked. The officer shook his head. "Don't know. Order says alive." Mara looked away. Just for a second. Verk saw it. "You know something." "No." "Stop saying no." She stared toward the open doorway. The station alarms reflected red across her face. "Talu." The Mureth came to her side. She rested one hand against his neck. "Not gripping. Just touching." Something about the gesture made Verk uneasy. Not because of the animal. Because of her. "Who are they looking for?" he asked. Mara didn't answer. Instead she said, "How many entrances to the freight level?" "Why? How many?" Verk hesitated. 4 public, 6 maintenance. 2 cargo lifts. Roof access. Yes. Service power. Independent grid. Security shutters. Sectional. Mara nodded once. "Then they're not here to kill randomly." "How do you know?" "If they were, they'd hit the power first and funnel everybody into the center." Verk stared at her. She continued. "They're driving people away from the north side." Verk checked the tactical map on his wrist. She was right. Authority signals were moving south. Civilian clusters too. The attackers were creating an empty corridor through the exchange. A corridor leading toward. Verk's stomach dropped. "Arrival gates." Mara nodded. "The West Freight arrivals." "How do you know?" "I guessed." "No." She looked at him. "I hate that word now." "What arrives at the West Freight gates?" Verk checked. A transport was docking. Civilian registry. Orion belt flag. Human ship. The passenger manifest loaded. 42 names. Mara took one look. Her face lost all color. Verk saw the name that affected her. Dr. Len Oren. Human. Age 67. Occupation, archaeological linguist. Verk pointed. Him. Mara closed her eyes. Just for a moment. Then opened them. "He's my father." Verk said nothing. Rain hissed beyond the broken terrace. Tallow pressed closer to Mara's side. Verk looked between them. Why would Kesh mercenaries want an archaeologist? Mara picked up the carbine. Because he's not just an archaeologist. What is he? Still an archaeologist. Verk's patience snapped. Citizen Ven. She looked at him sharply. My father spent 30 years translating pre-Union ruins. Last year, he found something beneath the ruins on Vesper. What? A language key. For what? Mara's mouth tightened. For machines. Verk frowned. What machines? The ones nobody built. Silence. Even the alarms seemed quieter for a second. Verk knew about Vesper. Everyone did. A dead moon filled with enormous black structures buried beneath the ice. Millions of years old. Nobody knew who had built them. Nobody knew what they did. Every major government had research teams there. Every major government denied having research teams there. Verk looked at the human transport on his display. Your father can activate precursor technology. He can read some of it. That is not the same thing. It is to people who want to control it. Another explosion shook the station. Mara started toward the doorway. Verk blocked her. No. She looked up at him. My father is in there. You are a civilian. Move. I cannot allow. Tallow appeared beside her. Verk stopped. Mara looked at the Mureth. Then back at him. I don't want to threaten you. That sentence is a threat. I'm telling you what happens next. What happens next? I go inside. Verk drew himself up. I am an authority enforcer. Mara's expression softened. I know. There was no mockery in it. That somehow made it worse. I need you, she said. Verk blinked. That was not what he'd expected. You know the station, I don't. You know where people will be trapped, I don't. You know the shutters, ventilation, service routes. She looked toward the smoke. And I know the people hunting my father. Verk studied her. The rainwater running from her hair. The old jacket. The scar beside her mouth. The way she held the pulse carbine. Not like a soldier. Not exactly. But like someone who had once been close enough to soldiers to learn what mattered. Behind her, Tallow stood motionless. Verk holstered his pistol and drew his heavier sidearm. Stay behind me. Mara almost smiled. Sure. That was not a suggestion. I know. They entered the station. The inside of Kestrel Exchange looked like a place caught between ordinary life and disaster. Half-eaten meals sat on tables. Luggage lay abandoned in walkways. A child's red coat had been dropped beside the tram gates. Emergency shutters had split the concourse into compartments. Smoke drifted beneath the ceiling. Somewhere above them, glass cracked. Verk led Mara through a service passage behind the retail stalls. Tallow moved without sound. Verk hated that. Every time he glanced back, the Mureth was somewhere slightly different. The passage ended at a maintenance junction. A security tech lay against the wall. Alive. Barely. Verk crouched. Officer. The tech opened one eye. 3 of them. Where? Gate corridor. Any civilians? Maintenance crews. Locked themselves in storage. Mara knelt. She checked the officer's wound. Through and through. Verk looked at her. You know medicine too. No. She tore a strip from an emergency seal pack. I know holes. She pressed it over the wound. The tech groaned. Mara leaned close. Listen to me, this will hurt. It already hurts. Good, that means you're awake. She sealed the wound. The tech cursed in 3 languages. Mara nodded. There, you're doing great. Verk almost laughed. Again. It was becoming a problem. He called for medical extraction. No response. The internal network was jammed. Can you walk? He asked. The officer nodded weakly. Mara helped him into a supply alcove. Then they continued. At the next intersection, Talos stopped. Mara stopped too. Verk nearly ran into her. What? She lifted one hand. Talos' ears angled forward. A faint scraping noise came from the passage ahead. Mara whispered too. How do you know? Talo. Verk looked at the Murath. The animal was staring at the right wall. Mara pointed left. One there. Then right. One behind the panel. Verk frowned. A maintenance panel. He checked thermal scan. Nothing. Kesh armor masked heat. Mara raised 2 fingers. 1, 2. Talo disappeared. The wall exploded. A Kesh mercenary came through the maintenance panel backward. He hit the floor hard. Talo followed. At the same moment, Verk stepped around the corner and fired twice. The second mercenary dropped his rifle. Mara kicked it away. The whole thing took less than 4 seconds. Verk looked at her. She looked at Talo. Good. The Murath returned to her. Verk lowered his weapon. Did you just use the animal to breach a wall? Mara shrugged. He was already going. They reached a viewing gallery overlooking the main north concourse. Verk looked down. A dozen Kesh mercenaries controlled the floor. More civilians crouched along the walls. Some wounded. At the far end, the West Freight arrival gate glowed blue. The human transport had docked. Mara spotted her father immediately. An older human man with white hair stood among the arriving passengers. He wore a brown travel coat and held one battered case. He looked irritated rather than afraid. 3 Kesh soldiers approached him. Mara's fingers tightened around the railing. That's him. Verk studied the floor. Too many attackers. Too many civilians. We need backup. Backup can't communicate. Then we restore the network. Mara looked at the ceiling. Where's the jammer? Portable field unit, likely center of the concourse. She scanned. That black crate. Verk followed her gaze. A waist-high unit sat beside the central information pillar. 3 mercenaries guarded it. Yes. Mara nodded. Turn off the lights. Verk looked at her. What? Turn off the lights. They have helmet optics. I know. So darkness helps them. Exactly. Verk stared. Then understood. Talo. No. Mara looked at him. It's a Murath. No. He can see in darkness. That is not the problem. It's definitely their problem. Verk shook his head. You're asking me to release a Murath into a dark concourse full of civilians. I'm not releasing him. That is exactly what you are doing. Mara looked over the railing. 1 Kesh soldier shoved her father. Len Oren stumbled. Mara's voice changed. You have a better idea. Verk didn't. He hated that too. He accessed the maintenance controls. Emergency lighting will remain. Kill that too. I cannot. Can you break it? Verk looked at her. You really are a mechanic. Can you? Yes. Mara crouched beside Talo. She placed both hands against his head. The Murath lowered himself. She whispered something Verk could not hear. Not a command. Something softer. Then she stood. Ready. Verk disabled primary power. The concourse went dark. Emergency lights flashed red. He overloaded the secondary circuit. Darkness. Complete. For half a second, nobody moved. Then the screaming began. Not civilians. Cash soldiers. Short bursts. Surprised. Cut off. Armor hitting tile. A weapon firing once. Then silence. Verk stared into the dark. His own helmet switched to infrared. He saw chaos. Mercenaries spinning. Weapons sweeping. Batalo was cold against thermal. Almost invisible. A dark streak. One Kesh soldier vanished behind a kiosk. Another was yanked off his feet. A third raised his rifle. Mara fired from the gallery. One shot. The weapon flew from his hands. Verk looked at her. She couldn't possibly see. She fired again. A ceiling sprinkler burst above another mercenary. Water poured over him. Tallow hit him a second later. Verk realized. She wasn't targeting people. She was shaping the battlefield. Breaking lights. Forcing movement. Creating sound. Tallow was doing the rest. How are you? Later. She fired at the jammer crate. The first shot sparked. The second broke the upper housing. The network suddenly cleared. Voices flooded Verk's receiver. Unit 9 report. North Concourse hostile force. Request immediate containment. Reinforcements inbound. Lights flickered back. The concourse came into view. 8 Kesh mercenaries were down. Alive. Mostly. Tallow stood on top of the information counter. Blood touched one side of his muzzle. His pale eyes were fixed on the remaining attackers. The civilians stared at him. Nobody moved. Mara leaned over the gallery railing. Tallow. The Mureth looked up. Back. He jumped down. The entire crowd flinched. Tallow trotted toward the stairs like an obedient farm animal. Verk looked at Mara. No one is ever going to believe this report. Write carefully. They descended. Mara reached her father first. Len Oren looked at her. Then Tallow. Then the rifle in her hands. He sighed. Mara. Dad. I told you not to come to the station. You didn't. I was thinking it. She hugged him. Hard. The old man hugged her back. For the first time since Verk met her, Mara's calm broke. Her eyes closed. Her shoulders shook once. Only once. Then she let go. Are you hurt? No. Anything broken? Only my patience. You always say that. Because everyone keeps testing it. Verk approached. Dr. Oren. Len looked up. You grabbed my daughter. Verk stopped. Mara stared at her father. How do you know that? Len pointed at Tallow. He tells me everything. Mara laughed. It came out unexpectedly. Even Verk smiled. Then the west wall exploded. The blast was bigger than the others. Everyone hit the floor. Smoke rolled across the arrivals gate. A new figure walked through it. Not Kesh. Dravik. Verk recognized the armor immediately. Military. Heavy assault plate. White command markings. The newcomer removed his helmet. Verk's stomach dropped. Commander Sathrin Kor. Verk had served under him on Darren's moon. 15 years earlier. The same mission where Verk had first seen a Murath. Sathrin looked older now. A scar crossed his left eye. One horn ridge had been replaced with metal. But Verk would have known him anywhere. Enforcer saw. Verk raised his weapon. Sathrin smiled. You always were difficult. Mara looked between them. You know him. Verk did not take his eyes off Sathrin. Unfortunately. Sathrin glanced at Tallow. For the first time, his smile disappeared. You. Mara frowned. Sathrin wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Tallow. The Murath went completely still. Len Oren whispered something. Mara heard it. What? Her father looked pale. That's not possible. Sathrin lowered his weapon. Not in surrender. In recognition. He stared at the Murath. Darren's moon. Verk felt the same memory strike him. The corridor. The dead bounty hunters. The Murath disappearing into smoke. But that animal had been smaller. Younger. Injured. Verk looked at Tallow's flank. Under the wet black hide, barely visible, was a long pale scar. Same place. Same shape. His mouth went dry. This is the same one. Mara looked at him. Same what? Verk didn't answer. Sathrin did. The same beast your friend found 15 years ago. Mara turned toward Tallow. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. You were on Darren. Tallow stared at Sathrin. His lips lifted. Not a snarl. Just enough to expose teeth. Sathrin stepped back. Everybody noticed. The military commander in heavy assault armor. The man who had walked through an explosion. He stepped back from the animal. Mara looked from Tallow to Sathrin. What happened on Darren's moon? Sathrin smiled again. But there was no humor in it. We taught the creature something. Verk's grip tightened. What? Sathrin looked at him. To hate us. Then he raised his weapon. Everything happened at once. Verk fired. Sathrin fired. Mara pushed her father down. Tallow moved. The first plasma bolt struck the wall. The second clipped Verk's shoulder plate. His armor spun him sideways. He hit the ground. Sathrin shouted, "Take the old man." Kesh mercenaries poured through the shattered west gate. They had been waiting outside. Dozens. Too many. Authority reinforcements were still fighting through the south level. Mara fired. One soldier fell. Two more came. Lin grabbed the fallen Kesh rifle. I have never liked stations. Mara stared. You know how to use that. I'm an archaeologist. That's not an answer. Neither was yours. He fired wildly. The shot hit a sign. Mara shoved him behind cover. Please stop helping. Tallow slammed into the first wave. But there were shock nets this time. Designed for him. Blue cables wrapped around his body. He crashed to the floor. Mara screamed. Not his name. Just a raw sound. She ran toward him. Sathrin intercepted her. He caught her by the throat. Lifted her. Verk tried to stand. His left arm wouldn't work. Sathrin pressed a pistol against Mara's ribs. Call it off. Mara gasped. Tallow thrashed inside the net. Electric current lit the veins beneath his hide. Call it off. Mara looked at the Murath. Her face twisted. Tallow. The animal froze. Smoke moved through the concourse. Gunfire echoed below. Mara's voice broke. Stay. Tallow stopped fighting. Sathrin smiled. Interesting. Mara stared at him. What do you want? Your father. Why? Len spoke from behind cover. Because he is an idiot. Sathrin looked toward him. Doctor. Len stood slowly. Commander. Mara shook her head. Dad, don't. Len ignored her. Sathrin's men surrounded him. Give me the key. Len laughed. No. Sathrin pushed the pistol harder against Mara. Lynn stopped laughing. Don't. Then give it to me. Lynn's eyes moved to Mara. Mara shook her head. Very slightly. Verk saw it. Sathrin did not. Len reached inside his coat. He removed a small metal cylinder. No longer than a finger. Black. Covered in symbols. Even from 10 meters away, Verk felt something strange about it. The air around the cylinder seemed wrong. Like heat without warmth. Sathrin's eyes widened. The Vesper key. Len held it up. Yes. Bring it. Len began walking. Mara watched him. Her breathing slowed again. Verk recognized that look now. She was calculating. Sathrin held out his hand. Len came closer. 5 meters. 4. 3. Then Len threw the key. Not to Sathrin. To Tallow. The cylinder landed beside the Mureth's paw. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Tallow bit it. Crunch. Sathrin screamed. No. The Mureth swallowed. Everyone stared. Len smiled. Mara's mouth fell open. Dad. Len shrugged. Well. Sathrin struck him across the face. The old man dropped. Mara went wild. She drove her elbow backward into Sathrin's side. Twisted. Grabbed his weapon wrist. Sathrin was larger. Stronger. Armored. It should have been over instantly. It wasn't. Mara stepped beneath his center of gravity and rotated. Sathrin went over her shoulder. He hit the ground hard. Verk stared. Mara pulled the pistol from Sathrin's hand. She aimed it at his head. And then stopped. Because Sathrin was laughing. Blood ran from his mouth. You think that helps? Mara's eyes narrowed. The key wasn't a key. Len, still on the floor, looked up. Sathrin smiled. It was a locator. Silence. Verk felt cold. Sathrin looked toward Tallow. And now it's inside the one creature that can lead us where we need to go. Mara lowered the weapon slightly. What are you talking about? Sathrin looked almost happy. Darren's moon wasn't a bounty operation. Verk's stomach turned. He had suspected that for years. Sathrin continued. We were excavating. Excavating what? Mara asked. Another precursor site. Len went still. No. Sathrin nodded. Yes. Mara looked at her father. Len whispered. The Darren Gate. Sathrin's smile widened. Exactly. Verk knew the old rumors. Everyone did. A structure beneath Darren's moon. A doorway made from black stone. No controls. No power source. No visible mechanism. The military had sealed the site. Officially because the tunnels collapsed. Unofficially because entire teams vanished. Sathrin pointed at Tallow. The Mureth wasn't hunting us. His voice became quiet. It was guarding the gate. Verk remembered the corridor. The beast had never chased them beyond the excavation boundary. Never. He had spent 15 years believing they'd survived because the animal stopped hunting. Now he understood. It had simply returned to its post. Mara looked at Tallow. The creature lay trapped in the shock net. Watching. Listening. Waiting. Sathrin stood. You named it. Mara's jaw tightened. Yes. Fed it. Yes. Let it sleep beside your workshop. Yes. Sathrin laughed softly. You have no idea what it is. Mara looked at him. I know enough. No. Sathrin stepped closer. You know what it does around you. He pointed at the animal. You do not know what it was made to do. Mara's expression hardened. Made. Len closed his eyes. Sathrin saw. You didn't tell her. Mara turned. Dad. Len said nothing. Dad. The old man looked at her. The Murath species isn't natural. Mara looked at Tallow. The creature's pale eyes blinked slowly. Len continued. We found genetic architecture at Vesper, artificial sequences, very old. How old? Older than every civilization in the Union. Mara stared. In Tallow. Len swallowed. His species was designed. For what? Sathrin answered. To hunt intruders. Mara looked back at the Murath. Tallow watched her. She walked toward him. Sathrin raised his weapon. Don't. Mara ignored him. Mara, Verk warned. She knelt beside the net. Electric current crawled across Tallow's hide. His breathing was shallow. Mara reached for the cables. Tallow made a soft sound. Not a growl. A whine. That broke something in her face. You idiot, she whispered. She touched his head through the net. You followed me all the way into the city. Tallow closed his eyes. Sathrin said, get away from it. Mara looked over her shoulder. No. You think it cares about you. Mara looked back at Tallow. Yes. It is programmed. So are you. Sathrin's face changed. Verk nearly smiled. Mara started cutting the net. Sathrin raised his pistol. Verk fired. His shot struck Sathrin's weapon. The commander turned. Verk stood unsteadily. His left shoulder smoked. You always talk too much, Verk said. Sathrin's eyes narrowed. You disappoint me. I learned from you. Authority sirens sounded nearby. Sathrin looked toward the south corridor. Reinforcements. Finally, his mercenaries started falling back. He cursed, then smiled. Doesn't matter. He touched his wrist. A pulse spread through the station. Tallow convulsed. Mara screamed his name. The black cylinder inside him was activating. Blue light leaked through his skin. Not from the net. From within. Len stared. Oh no. What? Mara demanded. The locator is signaling. To who? Len looked toward the ceiling. No. The whole station shook. Dust fell. Verk checked external sensors. Something enormous had appeared over Orison. No approach warning. No jump signature. It was simply there. A black shape in the storm. 30 kilometers long. No lights. No transponder. No visible engines. Every system in the exchange started failing. The red emergency lamps died. Gravity stuttered. Windows darkened. People screamed. Sathrin stared upward. Even he looked afraid. Len whispered. It found him. Mara held Tallow's head. What found him? Len looked at his daughter. The thing his species was created to guard. The sky outside turned black. Not night. Something blocking the storm. Blocking the city. Blocking the stars. Tallow opened his four pale eyes. He looked at Mara. Then toward the west. Toward the ash flats. Toward the place she had found him buried beneath a ruined extractor tower. And for the first time since Verk had seen him, the Murath made a sound. Not a growl. Not a click. A deep broken call. Almost like grief. Mara pressed her forehead against his. It's okay. Len looked at her. No. His voice trembled. No, Mara. She turned. Her father pointed toward the sky. Whatever is up there isn't answering the locator. Thunder rolled across Orison. The black ship opened. Not doors. Not weapons. The entire underside separated like the petals of some impossible metal flower. A beam of white light reached down. Not toward the station. Toward the ash flats. Len's face went gray. It's waking something. Verk looked at him. What? Len whispered 2 words. The gate. Far beyond the city on the horizon, the desert lit up. A line of black towers rose through the ground. One after another. Ancient structures pushing through volcanic glass. The storm clouds split. Lightning bent toward them. Every screen in the station came alive. The same symbols appeared. Symbols Verk had never seen. Len Oren had. He stared at them. Then translated. His voice barely carried. Guardian absent. Mara looked at Tallow. The screen changed. One more line appeared. Len read it. Containment failing. And somewhere far beneath the ash flats, something answered. Not with a roar. With a heartbeat. One enormous pulse. The floor shook. Then another. Tallow stood. The shock net snapped. Not because he tore it. Because whatever power had been holding it simply failed. He walked toward the shattered west wall. Mara caught his collar. Tallow. The Mureth stopped. His entire body trembled. He looked at her. Then toward the desert. Mara understood. So did Verk. Tallow wasn't trying to escape. He was trying to go back. Back to the place he had guarded before Mara found him. Back to the thing beneath the ground. Mara looked at Verk. How fast can you get us outside the city? Verk stared at her. The entire exchange is under attack. The city is under attack. By what? Mara looked at the black ship covering the sky. Let's find out. Verk should have arrested her. He should have waited for military command. He should have evacuated civilians. He should have followed procedure. Instead, he looked at Sathrin Kor. The commander had disappeared. Gone with the retreating mercenaries. And Verk knew exactly where he was going. The ash flats. For the gate. Verk reloaded his pistol. I have a patrol carrier. Mara picked up the Kesh carbine. Len Oren adjusted his broken glasses. Tallow moved to Mara's side. Verk looked at the animal. 15 years ago, he'd watched men die because they tried to force their way past him. An hour ago, Verk had grabbed the arm of the one person Tallow trusted. It suddenly seemed miraculous that he was still alive. You're sitting in the back, Verk told the Mureth. Mara looked at him. Tallow clicked softly. Verk sighed. Fine. And beneath the black shadow of something older than history, the 4 of them left the station and headed into the storm. Toward the ash flats. Toward the gate. Toward whatever Tallow had spent his entire life keeping locked away. Hash the enforcer grabbed her arm, then remembered what had been walking beside her. Hash Part 2. By the time they reached the western edge of Orison, the city had stopped pretending anything was normal. Traffic lanes were frozen. Skytrams hung motionless between towers. Emergency beacons flashed across rooftops. Above everything, the black precursor vessel remained suspended inside the storm. It made no sound. No engine pulse. No heat bloom. It simply occupied the sky. That was worse. Machines were supposed to make noise. Ships were supposed to announce themselves by vibration, exhaust, field distortion, something. The black vessel did nothing. Even the rain seemed to avoid it. Verk drove. Mara sat beside him. Len and Tallow were in the rear compartment. Verk had tried to insist the Mureth remain behind the armored divider. Tallow had looked at the divider. Then at Verk. Verk had opened it. Some principles weren't worth dying for. The patrol carrier cut through the abandoned industrial districts. Its heavy wheels sent water spraying across the road. Mara watched the city vanish behind them. You said you saw Tallow before. Verk kept his eyes forward. Yes. 15 years ago. Yes. What happened? Verk didn't answer immediately. The ash flats appeared ahead. A black plane stretching beneath the storm. Lightning illuminated the newly risen towers in the distance. There were hundreds now. Maybe thousands. Thin, obsidian structures breaking through the volcanic crust. Some were taller than Orison's central towers. Others barely rose above the ground. All of them pointed toward the sky. Mara waited. Verk finally spoke. I was 22. That's young for an enforcer. I wasn't an enforcer. What were you? Military. I guess that. Verk glanced at her. Then why ask? People tell different truths depending on how they answer. Verk looked back at the road. He understood why she was difficult to interrogate. I served in the 5th Frontier Battalion. Len leaned forward from the rear. I've heard of them. Verk's jaw tightened. Most stories are lies. Len nodded. Usually are. Mara looked at Verk. What were you doing on Darren's moon? Guarding researchers. That's the official answer. Verk glanced at her. You've met my father. Do you really think I trust official answers? Len raised a hand. That's fair. Verk continued. We were told an illegal salvage group had entered a restricted ruin. But there was no salvage group. What was there? Military archaeologists, engineers, intelligence officers, corps. Sathrin. Verk nodded. He was Captain Corps then. The carrier hit a cracked section of roadway. Tallow shifted behind them. Mara reached one hand back without looking. The Mureth pressed his nose against her palm. Verk noticed. He pretended not to. We were moving equipment into the ruins, Verk continued. The deeper levels were sealed. Corps wanted them opened. Len frowned. With explosives. At first. Len sighed. Of course. Then cutting lasers, field drills, sonic charges. Did any of it work? No. Mara looked toward the horizon. Then Tallow showed up. Verk remembered. The tunnel air. The smell of dust. The first body. Not at first, we found signs. What signs? Food missing, tracks, equipment moved, doors we closed were open. Mara almost smiled. Sounds like him. Verk's expression remained grim. Then one of our scouts disappeared. Mara's smile vanished. We found his armor 2 days later. Body. No. Len leaned forward. Mureths don't usually consume humanoid prey. Verk looked back. You know that now. We know almost nothing now. Fair. The road ended. Not gradually. A section of the elevated highway had collapsed into the desert. Verk stopped the carrier. Ahead, a jagged gap stretched almost 30 meters. Mara stared. Can this jump? No. Shame. Verk looked at her. That was a joke. Mostly. They left the vehicle. Wind struck immediately. The rain had become sharp, blown nearly horizontal. Tallow jumped down. The desert seemed to affect him. His posture changed. Head lower. Movements more deliberate. He smelled the ground. Then looked west. Mara watched him. He knows where we're going. Len stepped beside her. He might. That's not comforting. It wasn't intended to be. Verk scanned the area. There's an old service descent, half a kilometer north. They walked. The ash flats crunched beneath their boots. Black glass underwater. Ahead the towers pulsed faintly. No visible light. But the air around them distorted. Mara kept glancing at Tallow. After several minutes she said, "Dad." Len grunted. Was he made to guard the gate? I don't know. You said his species was designed. Yes. By the same civilization. Probably. Mara, we are discussing technology older than our evolutionary record. You've had years to study this. And it remains older than our evolutionary record. She looked irritated. Len stopped walking. Mara. She turned. He looked at Tallow. I didn't tell you because I didn't know what it would change. What? The way you looked at him. Mara stared. Len continued. You found an injured animal. Tallow isn't an animal. I know. Do you? Len took that. Didn't argue. You found him hurt. You cared for him. He followed you home. Yes. If I told you there was a possibility his species had been genetically engineered to kill trespassers outside an ancient containment structure, what would you have done? Myra opened her mouth. Then stopped. Len nodded. Exactly. I would have kept him. I know. Then why hide it? Because you would have started asking questions. You raised me. I know. Verk turned. Can we have the family argument after we prevent the ancient catastrophe? Mara looked at him. You're becoming sarcastic. I blame humans. They reached the service descent. A maintenance ladder dropped into a canyon carved beside the highway foundation. Verk went first. Mara followed. Len climbed carefully. Tallow looked down. Then simply jumped. 20 meters. He landed below Verk without visible effort. Verk stared. Myra called down. Show off. Tallow looked up. Verk shook his head. The canyon led to an old mining route. Abandoned rails disappeared toward the west. They followed. After 20 minutes, the storm began to weaken. Not because the weather improved. Because the towers were changing it. Clouds swirled around them in huge circles. Lightning traveled sideways. The air smelled metallic. Len carried a handheld scanner. Its display flickered constantly. Electromagnetic field is climbing. Verk checked his armor. Mine says the opposite. Your armor is wrong. It is military rated. So is military intelligence. Mara laughed. Verk did not. Much. They crested a ridge. And saw the gate. Mara stopped. Nobody spoke. The ash flats had opened. A crater nearly 10 kilometers wide lay before them. Not natural. The black volcanic surface had folded downward in perfect geometric steps. At the center stood an enormous structure. The gate. It was not a doorway. Not exactly. Two curved pillars rose almost a kilometer into the air. Between them hung nothing. Empty space. But the emptiness shimmered. Like dark water. Around the base were ancient ruins. And modern vehicles. Sathrin was already there. Dozens of mercenary carriers, portable power units, military equipment. Mara whispered he came prepared. Verk studied the camp. He's been planning this for years. Len looked sick. Longer. Mara turned. What do you mean? Len's face was pale. Sathrin funded part of my Vesper research. Silence. Mara stared at him. What? Not directly. Dad. A foundation. Dad. I didn't know. Mara looked away. Tallow stood beside her. Very still. Len's voice softened. I found out 6 months ago. 6 months? Yes. And you didn't tell me. I was trying to shut it down. By yourself. I had help. Who? Len didn't answer. Mara laughed once. No humor. Of course. Verk watched the camp. Personal arguments later. Mara shot him a look. You're enjoying that sentence. A little. He pointed. There. Sathrin's men were moving equipment toward the gate. A large circular machine had been assembled at the base. Len raised the scanner. No. What? Mara asked. They're building a resonance driver. Verk frowned. Purpose? To force activation. Can they? They shouldn't. Not reassuring. Len adjusted the scanner. The locator inside Tallow is transmitting a sequence. They're using it to synchronize the driver. Mara looked at the Mureth. So they need him. Yes. Then why isn't anyone coming for us? Verk froze. Good question. Too good. He turned. Tallow was staring back toward the canyon. The Mureth clicked once. Mara whispered, they're already here. The ridge behind them moved. Camouflage fields collapsed. 6 Kesh soldiers emerged. Weapons raised. Verk drew. Too slow. Drop them. A familiar voice came from behind. Sathrin. He stepped from the rocks. No helmet. No rush. He smiled at Verk. You always choose the difficult path. Verk lowered his pistol. The Kesh soldiers took their weapons. Mara stared at Sathrin. You knew we'd come. I knew the creature would. Sathrin looked at Tallow. The Mureth's muscles tightened. Sathrin raised a remote. Careful. Mara saw it. A red indicator. The locator. You can hurt him. I can kill him. Mara stepped forward. The Kesh soldiers aimed at her. She stopped. Sathrin smiled. That's better. Verk looked at him. What do you want? What I wanted 15 years ago. The gate. Beyond the gate. Len shook his head. You don't know what's beyond it. Sathrin looked at him. Neither do you. Exactly. That's why we're here. Len stared. You risked an entire city because you're curious. Sathrin's expression changed. No. He looked toward the black vessel in the sky. Because we're running out of time. Mara frowned. What does that mean? Sathrin gestured toward the gate. Do you know what the Union has found in the outer dark? Nobody answered. Sathrin continued. Dead systems. Len went still. Stars stripped of planets, worlds sterilized, civilizations erased. Verk had heard rumors. Military reports. Classified movement. Convoys rerouted. Entire fleets transferred beyond mapped space. You've seen them, Sathrin said to Verk. Verk didn't answer. Sathrin nodded. I thought so. Mara looked at Verk. What is he talking about? Verk hesitated, then said, 3 years ago, I processed refugees from the Arden Reach. Why? Their colony disappeared. Disappeared. Ground melted, atmosphere burned. Mara stared. By who? Verk looked at the black ship. We don't know. Sathrin smiled sadly. We do now. Len's face changed. No. Sathrin pointed at the vessel. That isn't the threat. Then what is it? A warning. The gate pulsed. Darkness rippled between the pillars. Tallow growled. First time Verk had ever heard him do it. Deep. Vibrating through the ground. Sathrin looked at him. The builders knew something was coming. They made guardians. They built gates. They hid facilities beneath dead worlds. Len whispered, containment facilities. Sathrin shook his head. Armories. You don't know that. I know enough. Mara stepped closer. Then why did the message say containment failing? Sathrin looked at her. Translation is interpretation. Len exploded. No, translation is translation. Mara almost smiled despite everything. Sathrin ignored him. We need whatever is behind that gate. To fight the threat, Verk said. Yes. And if you're wrong? Sathrin looked toward Orison. Then we die today instead of 10 years from now. Mara stared at him. That's your argument. It's the only one that matters. She looked at Tallow. No. Sathrin's eyes narrowed. What? You said they made him. Yes. You said his species guarded the gate. Yes. Then maybe they left him here for a reason. Sathrin smiled. Animals obey instinct. Tallow's ears moved. Mara's expression went cold. Say that again. Sathrin looked at her. He's an animal. Tallow vanished. Kesh soldiers shouted. One fell. Another fired. Mara moved. Verk moved. Chaos exploded across the ridge. Tallow hit the soldier, holding the locator remote. The man's arm snapped sideways. The remote flew. Mara caught it. Sathrin lunged for her. Verk intercepted him. The two Dravaks slammed together. Verk's injured shoulder screamed. Sathrin drove a knee into his ribs. Verk fell. Mara ran. Kesh fire followed. She slid behind a rock. Len grabbed a dropped pistol. This time his first shot hit something. A power unit exploded. He stared at the pistol. Huh. Mara yelled, Dad. Right. He ducked. Tallow ripped through the Kesh line. Not killing. Disabling. Throwing. Crushing weapons. Mara realized something. He was holding back. Even now. Sathrin kicked Verk down the slope. Verk rolled. His armor cracked against rock. Sathrin drew a blade. You were always soft. Verk spat blood. You were always boring. Sathrin charged. Verk caught the blade hand. They struggled. Dravak strength against Dravak strength. Sathrin was bigger. Better trained. Verk was angrier. For 15 years, he'd wondered why soldiers died on Darren's moon. Why the mission report had been falsified. Why Kor had been promoted afterward. Now he knew. Those soldiers had been expendable. Testing material. Bodies used to learn how Tallow's species reacted. Verk headbutted Sathrin. Bone cracked. Sathrin stumbled. Verk hit him again. Mara reached the locator control. The display showed Tallow's heartbeat. Very fast. A second line showed transmission strength. She pressed the first symbol. Nothing. Second. Nothing. How do I shut it off? Len ran toward her. I don't know. You're the archaeologist. It's modern mercenary hardware. Wonderful. Sathrin heard. He laughed while fighting Verk. You can't. Myra looked up. What? The device is parasitic. It bonded internally. Mara's face drained. You put something inside him you can't remove. Not without surgery. Len grabbed the remote. Studied it. There. Mara looked. Power cycle. Will it stop? Temporarily. She pressed. Tallow collapsed. Mara screamed. The Mureth hit the ground. His body went rigid. Then still. Tallow. She ran. Cash soldiers regrouped. Verk shouted. Cover her. Len fired. Again. Missed. Fired again. A mercenary ducked. Mara reached Tallow and dropped beside him. She put both hands against his ribs. No movement. Tallow. Nothing. Tallow. Her voice cracked. She pressed her ear against his chest. A heartbeat. Slow. There. She closed her eyes. Idiot. The Murath exhaled. His eyes opened. Mara laughed and nearly cried at the same time. Don't do that. Tallow licked her cheek. Verk saw it from across the ridge. Even in the middle of the firefight, the sight was strange enough to register. A creature designed by an extinct civilization. Built to kill intruders. Licking a mechanic's face. Then Tallow stood. His eyes changed. The pale color brightened. He looked toward the gate. The pulse began. Heartbeat. Not his. The underground one. Boom. The crater shook. Boom. Cracks spread across the ancient steps. Len stared. The driver. Sathrin smiled. Too late. The resonance machine activated. White arcs climbed the gate pillars. The dark space between them rippled. Mara grabbed Tallow's collar. The Murath pulled forward. Not violently, but insistently. He wants to go. Len looked at the gate. He has to. Mara turned. What? If he's a guardian, maybe he can stop it. No. Mara. No. If the system recognizes him. No. Tallow looked at her. Mara stared back. Wind moved through his dark fur. She understood what he wanted. She hated it. No. Tallow pressed his forehead against her chest. Mara's face broke. You don't get to decide this. He clicked softly. She held his head. You don't get to follow me home, eat half my food, destroy 2 doors, scare every delivery worker in Sector 12, sleep on my tools, and then decide you're going to walk into some ancient nightmare. Tallow blinked. Mara laughed through tears. That's not how this works. Len looked away. Verk looked away too. Tallow licked her hand. Then turned toward the gate. Mara caught him again. Tallow. He stopped. She stood. Fine. Verk stared. Mara picked up a fallen rifle. You're not going alone. Len sighed. Of course not. Verk looked at him. You're encouraging this. No, I raised her. I recognize when the battle is lost. The gate opened. Not dramatically. No explosion. No portal swirl. The darkness simply became depth. A corridor appeared beyond it. Impossible. Too large to fit beneath the crater. Black stone walls stretched into blue distance. Sathrin stopped fighting. Everyone stopped. Even the Kesh mercenaries stared. A voice came from the gate. Not sound. Meaning. Inside every mind. Guardian. Talos stepped forward. Mara beside him. The voice came again. Guardian absent. Talo growled. Then, unauthorized biological companion detected. Mara looked around. That better not mean me. Len whispered, it means you. Rude. Talo stepped through. Mara followed. Verk swore. Then followed. Len came after. Sathrin shouted. Move. Mercenaries rushed behind them. The moment they crossed the threshold, the world changed. No rain. No wind. No crater. They stood inside an enormous chamber. The ceiling was lost in darkness. Rows of structures stretched farther than Verk could see. Pods. Thousands. Maybe millions. Each one standing upright. Mara approached the nearest. Something moved inside. She stepped back. Len's face turned white. Not an armory. Sathrin entered behind them. His expression changed. What is this? Len looked at him. Containment. The pod opened its eyes. Not a creature. Something like one. Tall. Thin. Transparent skin. Too many joints. Its face had no mouth. The pod glass frosted. A symbol appeared. Len read it. Specimen 7. More symbols. Extragalactic predatory construct. Verk looked down the endless rows. How many? Len's scanner went blank. I don't want to know. The gate voice spoke. Guardian present. Talo stood still. Then, companion bond detected. Mara frowned. What does that mean? Len stared at the symbols appearing around Talo. He translated. Guardian behavioral corruption. Mara's eyes narrowed. Corruption. More text. Len swallowed. Attachment outside protocol. Mara looked at Talo. The Murath looked at her. Then the voice. Corrective action required. The floor opened beneath Mara. Talo moved instantly. He slammed into her. They rolled away as a vertical beam sliced through the place she'd been standing. Verk fired at the ceiling. Pointless. Sathrin screamed orders. Kesh soldiers spread out. Machines unfolded from the walls. Black insect-like drones. Dozens. Hundreds. Talo attacked. Mara fired beside him. Verk joined. Len ran toward a control pillar. Sathrin reached it first. What are you doing? Taking control. You idiot. Sathrin struck Len. Mara saw. Dad. She ran. A drone dropped between them. Talo hit it. Metal tore. Verk shot another. The room became war. Mara reached Len. Sathrin had activated the pillar. Symbols spread across the chamber. The pods began unlocking. Len stared in horror. What did you do? Sathrin smiled. Armory. One pod opened. The transparent creature stepped out. It moved slowly. Confused. A Kesh mercenary aimed at it. The creature touched him. The armor collapsed inward. Not shattered. Compressed. The mercenary vanished inside his own suit. Everyone froze. Sathrin's smile disappeared. Len whispered. Predatory construct. More pods opened. Mara looked at Talo. He was fighting drones. Not the creatures. The creatures were looking at him, recognizing him. Guardian. Mara understood. Talu. He turned. She pointed toward the control pillar. Here. Talu ran. Sathrin lifted his rifle. Mara shot it from his hand. He roared. Talu reached the pillar. Symbols changed. Guardian access. Len stared. The system is asking for a directive. Mara looked at him. What can he choose? I don't know. Symbols moved. Talu placed one paw against the black surface. Images flashed. Stars. Dead worlds. Creatures. Containment structures. A civilization building gates. A war outside the galaxy. Things crossing between stars. Not ships. Organisms. Living weapons. The precursor civilization had captured them. Studied them. Locked them away. Then disappeared. Mara saw one final image. Mureths. Hundreds. Created in laboratories. Bred for one purpose. Guard the prisons. Kill anyone who opened them. Her stomach turned. Talu saw it too. His body trembled. Mara touched him. The system reacted. Companion interference. A drone aimed at Mara. Talu destroyed it. The system spoke. Corruption confirmed. Mara shouted upward. He's not corrupted. The chamber went still. Even the creatures stopped. The voice responded. Define. Mara stared. What? Len looked stunned. It's asking you. Define corruption. Yes. Mara looked at Talu. Then up. He made a choice. The system paused. Guardian does not choose. Mara's jaw tightened. He did. Guardian FOLLOWS protocol. No. Mara placed her hand on Talu's neck. He was hurt. He could have killed me. He didn't. The system pulsed. Then he followed me. Silence. I fed him because he was starving. Talu leaned against her. He stayed because he wanted to. Sathrin laughed. You are arguing philosophy with a machine. Mara looked at him. Shut up. The system spoke. Choice is deviation. Mara shook her head. Choice is the point. Verk stared at her. Len did too. Even Sathrin stopped laughing. Mara continued. You built him to guard a door. She pointed toward the endless pods. But he became more than the job you gave him. The system pulsed. Impossible. Mara almost smiled. Yeah. She scratched behind Talu's ear. Humans hear that a lot. Verk actually laughed. A short surprised sound. Mara looked at the system. Let him choose. The chamber became silent. Then Talu touched the pillar. Images appeared. 3 options. Len translated. Restore containment. Good, Mara said. Second, release specimens. Bad. Third. Len stopped. What? Transfer Guardian control. To who? Len looked at Mara. Companion. Everyone stared. Mara blinked. Me. Sathrin lunged. No. Verk tackled him. They crashed into the floor. Mara looked at Talu. No. Talu clicked. No. He pressed his head against her hand. Talu. The system spoke. Awaiting Guardian choice. Mara's eyes filled. You don't have to. Talu touched the 3rd symbol. Transfer accepted. The entire chamber lit. Mara screamed. Not from pain, from information. Stars filled her vision. Millions of systems. Gates, prisons, guardian networks, warnings. She saw the black vessel above Orison. Not a warship. A relay. It had awakened because Talos' locator triggered a failsafe. She saw the outer dark. The destroyed colonies. The threat Sathrin had described. He had been right about one thing. Something was coming. But the things inside these pods weren't weapons to fight it. They were pieces of it. Captured pieces. Fragments of a species that consumed worlds. Sathrin had nearly released the very enemy he hoped to defeat. Mara gasped. The vision ended. She fell to her knees. Talos stood over her. Len ran forward. Mara, I'm okay. You are absolutely not okay. She laughed weakly. Fair. The system spoke. Companion authority established. Mara looked up. Close everything. Sathrin screamed. No. Restore containment. PODS sealing. The open creatures reacted. They moved. Vast. One lunged toward Mara. Talo intercepted. The creature struck him. Talo flew across the floor. Mara screamed. Verk shot the creature. No effect. Len pointed. Containment field. Mara didn't know how she knew. She just did. She lifted one hand. Field 7 activate. The floor beneath the creature lit. Black bands rose. The thing froze. Compressed into light. Returned to its pod. Mara stared at her own hand. That's new. Verk shouted. More coming. 5 open specimens moved through the chamber. Mara could feel the facility now. Not hear it. Feel it. Like muscles that weren't hers. Seal sector. Walls rose. 2 creatures were trapped. Redirect guardians. Nothing happened. Mara frowned. Then remembered. Talo was the last active Murith here. Maybe the last alive. Fine. She looked at the drones. Security units protect biological companions. The drones stopped attacking. Turned. Then hit the escaped specimens. Verk stared. I like you better in charge. Thanks. Sathrin broke free. He ran toward the pillar. Verk grabbed him. Sathrin struck him. Again. Again. You don't understand, Sathrin roared. We need this technology. Verk blocked a punch. We need to survive it first. Sathrin shoved him away. He drew a hidden blade. Mara turned. Too late. Sathrin charged her. Talo moved. He hit Sathrin from the side. The commander fell. The blade skidded. Talo stood over him. Same as on the station terrace. One paw on his chest. Jaws closed. Still. Sathrin froze. His face changed. Recognition. Darren's moon. 15 years. The same creature. The same mistake. Sathrin whispered, You remember me. Talo lowered his head. Mara stood nearby. Her face hardened. Leave him. Talo looked at her. Sathrin laughed softly. He won't. Talo stepped off. Sathrin stopped laughing. Mara walked closer. He chose. The chamber sealed. The last specimens vanished into containment. The black vessel above Orison transmitted one final signal. Containment restored. Then it disappeared. Not jumped. Disappeared. Like it had never been there. The storm over Kepri returned. Inside the facility, lights dimmed. Mara collapsed against Tallow. She wrapped both arms around his neck. He leaned into her. Len sat on the floor. I am retiring. Mara looked at him. You've said that before. I mean it this time. Sure. Verk approached Sathrin. The commander sat against the control pillar. Defeated. Verk held out restraint cuffs. Sathrin looked at them. Then at him. You think this ends anything? No. The outer systems are still dying. I know. Something is still coming. I know. You'll need me. Verk locked the restraints. No. Sathrin smiled bitterly. Still soft. Verk looked toward Mara. The human mechanic was checking, a 300-kilogram engineered predator for injuries. Tallow was trying to lick her face. She pushed him away. He tried again. Verk looked back at Sathrin. Maybe. They spent the next 9 hours getting out. The gate system had sealed most corridors. Mara had access, but not understanding. Every command required translation. Len complained constantly. Verk carried a wounded Kesh soldier for 3 kilometers. Tallow found the exit before anyone else. Naturally, when they emerged into the crater, dawn was breaking. The storm had moved east. Orison stood on the horizon. Still there. Damaged, but alive. Authority carriers surrounded the crater. Military ships hovered above. Verk's commander ran toward them. Then stopped when she saw Tallow. Everyone stopped when they saw Tallow. Weapons rose. Mara stepped forward. Don't. The soldiers looked at Verk. Verk considered how much explaining would be required. He was suddenly very tired. Lower your weapons. His commander stared. So, please. She looked at the Murath, then at Verk's broken armor, then at the handcuffed military commander beside him. Report. Verk exhaled. Long. Mara smiled. The next weeks became stranger. Sathrin Corps was charged with conspiracy, illegal military operations, mass civilian endangerment, kidnapping, biological trafficking, unlawful weapons deployment, and several crimes Verk hadn't known existed. The Kesh mercenaries talked quickly once they learned their employer could no longer pay them. Len Oren testified before 3 union councils. He insulted all 3. Mara returned to Sector 12. She tried to go back to work. That lasted 4 days. Then representatives from 7 governments arrived outside her workshop. Tallow sat in the doorway. They stayed across the street. Negotiations occurred from a respectful distance. The precursor gate was sealed, not destroyed. Mara refused every attempt to weaponize it. The Union hated that. The Union also feared Tallow. That helped. Verk was promoted. He considered refusing, then accepted, because the new rank allowed him to rewrite several dangerous fauna regulations. The amendment became known unofficially as the Tallow exception. Mara thought that was hilarious. 6 months after the incident, Verk visited her workshop. The place smelled like hot metal and machine oil. Music played quietly from an old human speaker. Mara was beneath a broken atmospheric compressor. Only her boots were visible. Tallow slept beside the door. Verk entered. Tallow opened one eye. Verk stopped. Hello. The eye closed. Verk continued. Mara slid out from beneath the compressor. You're late. I wasn't aware we had an appointment. You said you'd bring the inspection forms. Verk handed them over. She looked. These classify Tallow as a bonded sentient guardian entity. Yes. Not dangerous fauna. No. She smiled. You changed the law. Technically, the council changed the law. Because you threatened to resign. I did not threaten. You wrote, and I quote, I cannot effectively perform this position under regulations written by idiots. Verk cleared his throat. That document was private. My father got a copy. Of course he did. Myra signed the forms. Verk looked around. Where is Dr. Oren? Vesper. Verk stared. I thought he retired. So did he. He went back to the ruins. Apparently retirement is mostly theoretical. Verk sighed. Humans. Mara handed back the forms. Verk looked at the scar on her arm. The place he'd grabbed her at the exchange. It had been bruised for days. He felt embarrassed every time he noticed it. Myra caught him looking. What? Nothing. You're thinking about Platform 9. Verk looked away. Possibly. Myra smiled. You were doing your job. I grabbed you. Yes. Beside a Mureth. Yes. An ancient engineered guardian capable of dismantling military armor. Yes. Verk looked at Tallow. The Murath was asleep. Probably. I have reconsidered that decision. Mara laughed. Tallow opened one eye again. Verk pointed. He does that deliberately. Definitely. Verk sat on a crate. Mara poured 2 cups of terrible coffee. She gave him one. He tasted it. His face tightened. Why do humans drink this? Tradition. It tastes burned. It is burned. Why? That's where the flavor lives. Verk shook his head. They sat quietly. Outside, Sector 12 moved through an ordinary evening. Freight lifters hummed above the streets. Children chased a delivery drone. Rain began tapping against the workshop roof. Mara looked at Tallow. Do you think he remembers Darren? Verk considered. Yes. Everything. I don't know. Mara rubbed the edge of her cup. He remembers Sathrin. Yes. He remembers the gate. Yes. Do you think he remembers me finding him? Verk looked at the Murath. Tallow's head rested on his paws. His collar was worn now. The brass tag scratched. Mara had repaired it twice. Verk said, I think that's the thing he remembers best. Mara smiled faintly. Why? Because he could have returned to the gate. She looked at him. He didn't. Verk nodded. He came to your workshop. Tallow opened his eyes. He stood, walked across the room, and sat beside Mara. She rested one hand on his head. Verk watched. Long ago, somebody had built the Murath species for a single purpose. Guard the door. Kill the trespasser. Obey the protocol. No questions. No attachment. No choice. Then one injured guardian had met a human mechanic in the middle of a dead volcanic desert. She cut metal away from his leg, gave him water, called him an idiot when he tried to bite her glove, left him behind when he was strong enough to walk. And 4 days later, Tallow chose to follow her home. That choice had saved a city. Maybe more than a city. Maybe entire worlds. Verk thought back to Platform 9. His hand around Mara's arm. The crowd moving away. That soft click behind him. He had believed the dangerous thing in that moment was the predator. He understood now how wrong he had been. The most dangerous thing had been assuming that something created for one purpose could never become anything else. Mara scratched Tallow behind the ear. The Mureth closed all four eyes. Verk smiled. I still think he should be on a leash. Mara looked at him. Tallow opened one eye. Verk immediately lifted both hands. Joke. Mara laughed. The rain kept falling. The workshop lights glowed warm against the dark street. And the creature that had once guarded the oldest prison in known space slept peacefully beside the human who had taught him the one thing his makers never intended. He was allowed to choose who he walked beside. And from that day forward, whenever anyone at Kestrel Exchange told the story of the enforcer who grabbed Mara Vin's arm, they always laughed at the same part. Not when the enforcer realized a Mureth was standing behind him. Not when the creature brought armed mercenaries to the floor. Not even when an ancient ship appeared over the city. They laughed when Mara looked at the terrified officer and calmly said, "You really shouldn't do that." Because by then, everyone understood. She had never meant grabbing her arm. She had meant forgetting what was walking beside her.